My name is Vita Sadanandan, and today is the 24th of March 2026, and the time is 6:34 a.m. The area of body I will be maintaining health of by the Nirbeeja Yoga style is the region of the diaphragm. Now, we have heard of diaphragm breathing. Now, those who have been practicing yoga or thinking in terms of the yogic ways of thinking, um, may have come across some idea of what diaphragm breathing is. But consider that even what's available on YouTube, or what, at least what I have heard popularly about how diaphragm breathing is practiced, is not what diaphragm breathing is about, at least not through the Nirbeeja Yoga style. Now, in Nirbeeja Yoga, diaphragm breathing is about the breath of the diaphragm itself. The lungs expand and contract, and consequently, we have breath moving through our nose, and then there is a exchange of oxygen where the lungs began functioning after uh, you're born from mother's womb. Yeah, but inside the mother's womb, the a viable fetus also grows, but not with the lungs functioning. So you would think, okay, so mom's umbilical cord connection with the baby is what's maintaining the exchange of gases. No, a viable fetus has the placental connection good, and so the fetus is breathing. Well, that's one way to look at it, but then there needs to be it's like a cord from the that kind of connects the mother's material with the babies, but there is no real connection through the placenta. There are tissues through where there is like osmosis exchange. There is no real connection. There is a cellular or osmotic kind of exchange. um, So, in a sense, the baby is you can't say a little bit like a parasite, yeah, or cooperative, coordinative living, where the baby takes care of mother, mother takes care of baby, and it's a cooperative living. Now, how then is life maintained in the fetus? We found I facilitate health from the biodynamic method of healthcare, clinical health. Facilitate health clinically from the biodynamic method of healthcare. And there, in this method of healthcare, there is reference to primary respiration, which is also been called the breath of life, which then maintains the fetus alive. And then, when the fetus is born outside the mother's womb, the lung begins to function. And that adds another layer of respiration, which then enables living outside the mother's womb without the umbilical cord. But the umbilical cord continues to be there in the fetus, in the baby, outside the mother's womb too, which means that umbilical cord continues to have a function which we may not have recognized, but there are some sciences that call it the Nadi um, Shodhana, or um, a set of nervous system, apparently, channels that also has connection with the umbilical cord through where the body is maintained, which has a certain continuity of thought, because the umbilical cord then begins the whole baby's body, organs forming. So that belly button continues to be there because that primary connection with the entire body continues to be there from even though the cord with the mother has apparently been cut. Yeah, because there is tissue memory continuity. So you have a physiological, I can't say organ, but you have a function. Our definitions of organs and tissues and cells, they keep going through changes. Like we look at twinkly stars and we say that's not a star, that's a planet. Yeah. So our definitions keep getting refined as we find new evidence. So I don't know if this is going to be an organ, no idea. Yeah, but it's definitely a system that maintains the entire body. And I find through the Nirbeeja Yoga style that that is true. The umbilical cord maintains health in a manner which, for example, the mesentery maintains health in a manner, or the heart maintains. But the heart alone or the umbilical cord alone is not sufficient for maintaining the entire body. It is important, but there are other functions also. And then there are things we know about and don't know about. For example, they call it the Devadatta or the Dhananjaya. These are different kinds of vayus, but they're also metabolic processes. 10 of them are listed on Google, 5 of them vayus, the other 5 being upavayus. But I find that's a categorization and how we look at the matter. Um, I think I'm going to find more evidence about why is it called as upavayus when I find they are having so fine little details that I'm tending to think all 10 are important. But it's like you're saying thorax, abdomen, head, pelvis, and then you have sub-organs within them. Okay. But then upa also is from you and that which emerges from you. So upper and lower, like Maslow's pyramid and uh, Shakta, the pyramid and the Shakti pyramid. I'm just thinking about that. Is that the difference? Because there's Upanishad and is that which will go into the matter and that which emerges from there. So, okay, that is not the topic of discussion here. The topic of discussion is the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm comes into existence while in the mother's womb, and outside also we have the diaphragm, and is part of the lung physiology, anatomy related with. So, the diaphragm has a breath of its own, which is a fine combination between primary respiration and secondary respiration. Because when the lungs expand and contract, which began more after the baby is born outside the mother's womb, the diaphragm gets moved. So that's like you having siblings, yeah? And now you are jostling for space, yeah? Which is also a necessary part of growing up, but there is an optimal where you're maintaining humanity cross boundaries, yeah? And the diaphragm then needs to be seen in terms of, well, people living in the same, under the same roof, or rather within the same skin. Yeah, we have different kinds of people, and each organ, each cell, tissue, organ systems have their own characters and their own ways of being when they are having what they need or don't have what they need. Yeah, for example, some people call them diseases. Diseases. You don't go talking to your organs. That's odd, weird. That's not how things work. Which is why Nirbeeja Yoga style works or has been working. And I'm introducing you to, I'm kind of warming you up to the Nirbeeja Yoga method, style, Nirbeeja Yoga style of maintaining health. Yeah. Because I find method is having a little problem with that. Yeah, okay. We are not doing Shabda Kosha Shuddhikaran here. We are doing warming up to the experience of Nirbeeja Yoga. Now, and about the diaphragm. So, this is an experiential work. So, I invite you to bring your attention to the region of where you know the diaphragm is, which is about the lower portion of your rib cage. Okay? We're going straight for the matter. And I invite you to bring your attention to the left and right sides of the lower part of your rib cage. Now, the lower part of your rib cage has ribs which are, you know, come together front and back between the spine and the sternum. And there are ribs which are floating where they are connected with the spine but in the front are open to allow for the liver, the spleen, the stomach, the pancreas, duodenum to not be strangled. So nature has found that, leaving these lower two ribs open allows for these organs to also breathe. Yeah, they have the space to grow, or rather to be the size and shape they are required to be. Because unlike animals, I don't know if animals have floating ribs, but when animals over time, apes, we started standing upright on 2 feet, our organs started spilling out. Yeah. And so the rib cage needed to have a little give us some space, jostling, and I don't know if that's how that form, but there's something about the floating ribs which allows for the liver to be, the liver, the living person. Yeah, the liver. Okay, so there's something about that. Now, the diaphragm holds is connected with the connected ribs and the floating ribs. Yeah, which makes for an interesting, best of both worlds. Diaphragm. Now, it's like a drum, dome shaped. If you've seen a hand drum, dome shape, you have a certain idea. And it's connected with the spine. It's also connected in front to different tissues and organ systems. Yeah. And since it's part of the same body, it's kind of like a bag which has connections with other organ systems. So, liver has a skin, the hepatic capsule. Stomach has a skin, which then forms the externalmost surface of the stomach. Spleen. So every organs are within their own skins. It's like onion, tomato, mango having their skin, and then there's content inside, and they are all part of the same cornucopia. Yeah, they've all come together and are functioning as different departments. People, organizations. Organization. An organization is basically different cells in different composition called tissues, and then they form an organ, and then they are part of an organ system, digestive system, excretory system, respiratory system. Yeah. And these systems are all related in the same body. Yeah, organization, stratification. Now, the diaphragm, when it is maintaining health, is not just maintaining health of best of both worlds, primary respiration and secondary respiration, attached ribs and floating ribs, organs on top of the diaphragm and below the diaphragm. Um, Things you know about it, you don't know about it. Yeah. And then there are tubes going through the diaphragm. Yeah. So if the diaphragm is too tight, those tubes get strangled. And then you would have heart conditions or gastric acidity, or food is not going down properly. So digestive issues. Your brain starts not functioning so well because there are also nervous connections. There is also this abdominal aorta, which could give you grief. Oh my goodness, your solar plexus goes into existential angst. So the diaphragm is pretty important. And getting familiar with this diaphragm has allows you to be. Otherwise, you could be doing and doing, and it's never enough because your diaphragm is tight. Yeah, you're strangled from the middle. Oh my goodness. That's like between heaven and hell, and you're kind of like heaven and hell. Because there are many diaphragms. Okay, diaphragm is also a transverse tissue. Yeah. The diaphragm is like a representative of transverse tissues. Yeah. Your pelvic floor is also a diaphragm. It is transverse. But we don't call the pelvic floor a diaphragm because, well, you do have a diaphragm. Okay, let's just say it's a transverse. Perineum, transverse tissue, kind of. Yeah. And then you have the base of your spine, no, your base of your skull, the bottom of your, okay, let's just say the tentorium and the falx. So the tentorium connects between ear to ear. That's a tissue running through your brain that connects between ear to ear and also connects with the midbrain. So the whole system is, your brain is not falling down on the, your cerebrum is not falling onto your cerebellum. And then they will be jostling for space. They're like siblings, give me space. So there is, walls so that you maintain your space, the other one maintains their space. Yeah. Or so everybody have their own spaces, like partition in an office. So you have your own spaces. This is transverse. So this is a multi-story building. Our human body is a multi-story building, and there are diaphragms to hold space between the different stories. Multi-story between the first floor and the second floor, and so everybody have their own floor, and they need to be breathing, so that the upper floor can also have a nice little trampolining effect. Otherwise, they get a little cookied. They get a little old and cantankerous because this is a different kind of a building where they need to keep moving. So you don't have to go to the gym. You see the benefit of Nirbeeja Yoga. When you're doing this, this is how I maintain health. And I haven't really been thinking about mountaineering or, um, you know, dance or where you need to really, use your muscles and do a lot of things. No, activities of daily living. Wash clothes. There's a washing machine, but also being able to wash my clothes by myself, cook, do cleaning, swabbing, do my work, just a little enough. Yeah, not too great. Walk a few kilometers. So, and this Nirbeeja Yoga continues more or less a 24 by 7. You need to do something to maintain being alive. Otherwise, you've had the 2 years of the pandemic where a small little virus, ooh, yeah, kind of decapacitated you. Yeah, that does not really work. And how much money are you going to spend on medical bills? So when you can take care of health, protection of health is better than prevention of diseases, better than cure. So it also saves a lot of money. Health insurance, you're ensuring you have health. Make sure you have the wealth enough to then be able to have wealth that would then, be regarded as in the market as valuable. So I found what I'm doing is already not there in the market. So my way of maintaining health itself is the value by which I earn my living. Yeah. So I'm in different stages of making it available. If this interests you, then I will teach this in exchange for the money that you make. Yeah, that works for me now because that also helps me do my work better. So you are doing better and we all are doing better. Now, about the diaphragm, bring your attention to the left and right sides of your diaphragm, which is the lowermost portion of your rib cage. And so I had to set up all of this context to appreciate how important the diaphragm is and what all the diaphragm is doing. So if the diaphragm is tight, the lower portion of your rib cage tend to feel a little stocky, like a little blocky, you know, a little like you have, you sometimes when you go for a walk, you find a bench you can sit on, a little chock-a-block, yeah. And you may need to bring attention to that region in terms of, let's just say, oh, that could also be because your liver is so thick from one end to the other end and your liver needs a little maintenance. We'll come to that in another day of the calendar. Yeah. But today we are only working on the diaphragm. So that the middle area, the lower portion of your rib cage, may be a little thick because of the liver or because of the diaphragm. Okay, that's one difference. If you have not been drinking too much water, your liver may seem a little blocky. Yeah, a little. I have not been drinking so much of water. So, oh, all right. The diaphragm itself would seem like your lower portion of your rib cage is held by a band, like an elastic band, like from inside. Yeah, because that'll be stretchy, a little tough, tight. Yeah, and you can't just. This is not an elastic which you can stretch it, but you can feel it. You can breathe. Okay, now what does that mean? That doesn't mean expanding and contracting your lungs. Take a deep breath, your lungs expand, and then your diaphragm would have to be pushed down. No, no, no. If your diaphragm is tight, you can try taking a deep breath, but you cannot take a deep breath because your lungs, the lower portion of your lungs, is having more dead space. Like unused spaces in your house. You would have to clean up the space before you can use it. And also, if that unused space is related with another wall, which is like so stocky, you would have to first work with the wall. So the wall is um, pliable or work withable such that that room is more livable. Yeah. So that's how the diaphragm is related with the lower portion of your lungs. So there is no improving your lung capacity without improving your diaphragm, the health of your diaphragm. So, because there is no giveaway otherwise. There is just, oh yeah, you can do your stuff, you can stand on your head, but your diaphragm is not moving. And it's not being peevish, it's just that not taken care of. You don't even know how to take care of your diaphragm. So that's what we're addressing here. Okay, it may be easier for you to first notice how is the lower portion of your rib cage. Now this is where taking notes begin. Yeah. Also, if you haven't already been taking notes. Pay attention to any sense of warmth in the lower portion of your rib cage. Now, this may seem like a standard in what I'm saying, but we'll come to the finer details. Pay attention to any sense of warmth in the lower portion of your rib cage and any sense of softness about the lower portion of your rib cage. Now, when you pay attention to warmth and softness, you're more likely to be able to feel the lower portion of your rib cage or the tissues in the lower portion of your rib cage. You may tend to burp. That would be your diaphragm actually giving way such that there is burp, air moving through your food pipe because your diaphragm is less choked. Hiatal hernia, for example, would be from acid refluxing into your esophagus and it forming a little acidy ring because there is your diaphragm may be choking it or content there cannot be at ease. They are always strangled in some way. Yeah, one of the causes. So burping would be coming from okay, now air now moving. Now there could be sometimes a little shortness of breath because your lower portion of your lungs are having a little movement because your diaphragm is moving slightly. Yeah. So you may seem, you may experience an uncomfortable or unfamiliar movement in your chest because portions of your lungs you didn't know had to move may now be moving and you are not familiar with that movement. Okay. What would help is for you to continue to pay attention to the lower portion of your rib cage, the tissues there, in terms of warmth and softness. And I'm saying warmth. There could be hot, there could be cool or cold, but continue to notice where warmth may be there. And if you're not able to find the warmth, notice for softness because you have soft tissues. The ribs are more hard, bony tissue, but you have a lot of muscles and skin and subcutaneous tissue like fat, and they're all soft tissues. So have a feeler for soft tissues about the lower portion of your rib cage. Okay? And you would have to pay attention to the front, sides, and back. Because your rib cage, the lower portion of your rib cage is a surround sound, like in all directions. And the lowermost portion has two on each side, two ribs on each side, which are floating. The front portion is open, but they are connected at the back with the spine. Okay? So that's a little bit like a wing, but it's a different thing, slightly different. I After this live, I recommend you download this app called Visible Body or Biodigital Human. Yeah, I recommend both because there is different sets of information in Visible Body and in Biodigital Human. If you can't find one in this, also look in the other. You might find certain details there. It's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, they're just nice. And you can look through where the diaphragm is, the anatomy, so you would have a visible orientation to your own body in a verifiable standard model of human composition. Yeah, human model. Yeah, and a live body functions move differently. So these two apps offer anatomy, but not physiology. Okay, so you would have to feel this, pay attention to details. There are several things which are not already covered, but warming up the basics, warming up, paying attention to the warmth, at least in the lower portion of your cage, and then slowly being able to pay attention in terms of softness will help your nervous system develop those fine sensibilities, fine nerve fibrils, yeah, fibrils, to then be able to sense what warmth, what softness. And then at some point, there is warmth, there is softness because that's how the human body is made. And your nerve fibers will begin to sense, oh, this is what you mean by warmth. And this is what you mean by softness. And then your central nervous system, your processing unit, will have a more experience, to then record in the memory on this is how softness and this is how warmth feels like. Yeah. So you kind of learn to walk at some point in time. Your whole tissue system learns to have a tissue memory on what walking feels like. So if you're lying down, your tissue knows you're not walking. And when you're running, your tissue knows you're not walking. Yeah. So your memory database becomes finer, detailed. Okay. So warmth and softness. And as you continue to pay attention to softness, what may be noticed is different textures of tissues. So the bone is a harder texture, yeah, than the muscles. And when you can notice the difference in the texture, tissue texture, you are likely to notice that inside the bony texture is another elasticated band. It may look like okay, look, it may feel like a little stretchy, little strangly sometimes, a little tight from inside the bones. So there are layers of tissues. Outside would be soft tissue, a little inside would be a little bony, which is where your rib cage, and inside that would be this maybe stretchy, a little elasticated. So layer, layer, layer. Yeah. Details. So when you're paying attention to softness is when you're more likely to notice difference in texture. And then continue to also notice temperature range. It could be warm, cool, cold, hot. Why I say this is when you're a little more aware, thermodynamics happens. Your metabolism a little bit revs up because you have nerves, um, you know, more connecting with your muscles, and muscles tend to move. In a human body, muscles are designed to move. So there may be a little more movement of the muscles, which then generates heat. Okay. Otherwise, they may be like, meat or fish, for example, in the freezer, frozen. For or you have apps on your phone, which may be kind of archived because you're not using them as much. And you have certain other apps which you use more often, but not. Yeah. So they are more in a frozen state or archived state. Yeah. So you're having life or something like it when you're not aware of how your body's different tissue structures are. Yeah. Um, like a phone. Yeah, you got the idea now. When you pay attention a little more to the softness and the muscles are a little more aware, the awareness comes from your nerves becoming a little more innovated with the muscles. Your muscles are like, oh, yeah, okay. It's like you have a little light. You can't say light. Okay, let's just say a little bit of warmth. And then the room is not so much in the dark because you are more aware of this room called the lower portion of your rib cage, or the ribs in the lower portion of the whole framework, or something like the diaphragm. You really don't know what this room called the diaphragm is, but you have some sense of there is something inside the ribs. Yeah, that's like your brain becoming a little more informed. I didn't know I had a room like this. But there are many things you don't know about, but you have now you now know this while before you didn't. So you're more knowledgeable. You're having more knowledge than you did before you started this live about this topic. And there is so much more, but you would do better a little by little, yeah. You're anyhow living in this baggage, this house, office, where have you, yeah? So this is your first home, first house. So getting to know your house has many benefits. Now, for example, it would be pleasant to live in your house than people doing out of the body experiences looking for, wellness outside because they don't know Nirbeeja Yoga. Yeah. If there are people who are searching for health and wellness and they don't know how exactly to have it, you should direct them to these lines, yeah, or ask them to contact me. If there are specific cases where there are different kinds of specific kinds of diseases, diseases, then I'll be able to help in warming up to some of the necessary basics. And Nirbeeja Yoga is one of the necessary basics. There are three others. Yeah, I told you there is a whole lot of stuff. It's more like we're still warming up to Nirbeeja Yoga. Yeah, a lot of details. So it's like the internet. You didn't know at some point started. This is like the advanced version of internet. You didn't even know you had to start at some point. But then there are many schools you don't even know exist. So yeah. For example, I don't know rocket science, kind of. Yeah. Yeah, I just know what I know, bits of information here, there. But this is my specialty, the human body. And beautiful. And I discovered our human body is designed to live in life in the multiverse. All right. Continuing with the diaphragm. Yeah. Which means you who has a body that's human is designed to live in life in the multiverse. And now how do you turn this on? How do you turn life on? Yeah. We are warming up to it. Yeah. Which means you could have several tissues frozen. Now we are slowly melting the ice, like the movie Frozen Queen. Yeah, Frozen. Yeah. And then what happens when the ice melts a little is love is possible. And love is a technology in and of itself. Oh, love has a reason. Many have died because of it. But then here we are slowly melting the ice in such a way that love maintains life, sustains our life, enlivens people who are around us, and also future generations and their future generations. That's a little bit of a science in and of itself. I call it conglomerate science or conscience. Love heals wounds over time. So, time, we will be studying time also. Um, People are wondering what in the world is time? You will learn it. Yeah. Time, space, relativity. You will learn all of those details. Love and how it heals wounds over time. So now is the time for wounds to heal. And love is here. Yeah, slowly we'll warm up. There could be a relationship between unconditional love and unconditional hate, all hinged on love. So if you're unhinged from love, you don't know if you're having unconditional love or unconditional hate because you don't know how to differentiate. You could be calling one the other. And then you don't know apples from your oranges. Yeah, I say you don't know your ass from a hole in the ground. Ass is administrative statistical system. If you're not taking notes, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, you could argue about apples when I'm talking about oranges. Yeah, that makes for interesting language differences. One is calling God, the other is calling energy, the other is we have many, many sciences, and everybody is talking many things. We may be even talking related things, but we are talking in our own languages from our own perspectives, with or without complete information. Yeah, that makes for, oh my God, that's like different vessels in a kitchen, some filled, some not, and making noises. Why do you think we are all on the same planet? God watching us from, omnipresent, omniscient. They're like, they haven't figured it, making lots of noises, don't know what they're talking. They keep praying all the time. I don't think they even know what they're praying. So let's figure this out. Yeah. This is by just warmth and softness, you become a little more familiar with what the sounds are. The sound, a body in a sound mind or sound mind in a sound body. The mind body connection becomes a little more together. Yeah. And you get a little more unified. And then you come to unifying, where you're ongoingly healing, which is how a car, like, it's like a car driving, while the software and hardware are regularly updating. Yeah. So no downtime. Yeah, you're like life on. Yeah, that's just beautiful. Now, those things are all nice. Possible. But it takes a little warming up. You got to have life, moving parts. What in the world are these parts? So diaphragm, as you pay attention to warmth and softness, you're getting a little more informed because your nervous system is picking up information, but your nervous system is not the only um, goodies that your body is made of. It's also got muscles, it's also got subcutaneous tissue, seven dhatus, rasa dhatu or lymph, rakta dhatu or blood, yeah, medusa or fat, um, mamsa or muscle, asti dhatu or bone, majja or bone marrow, shukra, reproductive fluid, or libidinous, that which has you be up, right, live on. Otherwise, you have some form of destrudo where things are, libido, destrudo. So, as in pro life or against life. So, yeah, that way. So, shukra, that which has a spin on for better. Could also be going into the matter and then becoming better, reproductive uh, viability in the fluids. Yeah, which would be one way to look at it. It's not that one is more important than the other, which would be like saying the cherry on the top of the cake is more important. The cherry on the cake is important because you have the cake. If you had only the cherries, you will get a bottle or jar of it. But it wouldn't be the same thing as having that cherry on that cake. And to have that, yeah, it's that's what makes it special. So Shukra special, Rasa Dhatu special, this bone special because they're all related. Each have their own unique functions. And that's like seven substrates. You know, woman of substance, man of substance. Otherwise, you have the same substance, but you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And then character, and then quality, and citizen of Earth, and otherwise you vote, but that doesn't make you a citizen. Yeah. And I'm talking about citizen of Earth. We may be citizens of our own countries or our own regions, but not necessarily connected with Earth. And why Earth is in existence. So why are we in existence? So connected with the universe, citizen of the universe. And then there's the multiverse. And then there are bigger fractals. Yeah, I'm yet to arrive at what's a bigger number there. But we have n, yeah, no technology. Or there is um, 10 to the power of n, for example. So what would that be? If m, if n comes after, you know, after, if n comes after m, what would n be? I'm thinking Narayana, but there's also stories. Multiverse, we will come to it. There are lots of possibilities. We will just stay with the diaphragm right now. That drum that holds that sounds the music of our life. If it's not drumming, making sound, and it's making all kinds of sounds, God would be like, "Are you okay, honey?" Yeah. So instead of having like, "Yay, I got a partner with whom to work with," you'd be like, I should be worried about this one now. Yeah. So uh, God would be busy nursing the creatures who are supposed to be supporting the entire enlivening process, life enlivening process. More workers who can then do the work of enlivening life rather than we've got a hospital of people. Yeah. All with the downtime. So how do you think the work of, enlivening life, spices of life is all happening? It's like having an organization with a lot of sick people. And United Nations formed, and then World Health Organization formed, and then they collated WHO's global list of diseases. And looking for who's going to who's care enough to then, bring that list down. So we have a healthy economy. From warring tribes to hear me talking this stuff, we've come a long way. Yeah. And you're listening to this. So you're among those first ones who get to be healthy. Yeah. And then think in terms of humanity across boundaries, humane, and humanity across boundaries, and in living life in the multiverse. And we are all seeds of life from our own family trees. When you're doing well, you, people who came before you, and people who come after you will also do well. That's like a whole lot of people are going to be doing well. Yeah, health, wealth, and wisdom. Really, really nice. There's this idea of Shrigandha. Shrigandha is a root parasite, or the sandalwood tree is basically a root parasite, which takes the support of other trees. And according to the strength of the support, it becomes a sandalwood tree. And when the sandalwood tree is functioning, trees that are complement with it, um, sandalwood tree itself is economically good. And then there are other trees, mahogany, for example, neem, for example, teak wood, for example, rosewood, for example, many, many. They also start thriving. So you live, contemporaries live, future generations also live. Yeah. So that's it takes a different science on how to have that happen. For example, you paying attention to the warmth and softness and any sense of space about the region of your diaphragm. Yeah, about the lower portion of your rib cage. Because then your floating ribs are more floating, like a ship on the sea, on the waves of time. And keeps the ship up like you can't say like a submarine, you can also look at that way, but a ship has a lower portion and the upper portion. You're sailing. Yeah. So your diaphragm moves up and down, keeps you buoyant enough to be sailing on the waves. And you can maintain balance between left and right. So that's a different experience than walking on a trapeze, tightrope walk, but you still have a rope, yeah, still maintain balance between left and right sides, middle ground, yeah, and having the best of both worlds, left and right, and front and back, and you're more on your way, yeah. But living, not just surviving. Oh my God, yeah, oh, everything is shaking, and you got to hold on to something. Two, you're holding on to nothing because you're standing in your own, by your own center of gravity, by your own reason for being in existence, by your own fine connection between the microcosm, the world inside, and the macrocosm, the world outside, where there is also the ocean. Yeah, lots of waves and lots of people and land, and there's different planets and so many things. And you got your world, your boat, your ship. Yeah, oh, really, really nice. Your diaphragm makes that possible. Otherwise, you're surviving life. Yeah, guerrilla warfare. Okay. Versus you be, others be too, and future generations also be. Yeah, mighty baby. Yeah, bay as in Bay of Bengal or a bay of water, and be. You're in your own space, your own cove. No, bay. Yeah, your own bay. All right, that's really, really nice. So on that note, we will pause for now. I went overboard. Okay, 15 minutes about. This is what turned about in the morning. Now let's see what happens in the evening between 6:30 and 7. When the sun is in different stages of setting and people are after their daily physiology, okay, daily work and all that stuff, and don't know Nirbeeja Yoga because they may, you should let them know. Yeah. In which case, they would also have the benefit of Nirbeeja Yoga and then be able to be well enough. While, some of the difficulties I face is because people don't know what I'm doing. People don't know what I do. Or if they are doing what I'm doing, then I would also have a pleasant day. Yeah. Otherwise, everybody going back, their diaphragm is busy surviving life while their lungs are not functioning as well, having a lot of dead space. You probably have a little more living space. Your lungs, the more you pay attention to warmth and softness, the dead space becomes a little more alive. That's like the Dead Sea coming a little alive because the saltiness of your body composition is getting more converted into living salts, salts that keep you alive. So dukkha becomes a little more sukha, kind of. Yeah, that would be really nice. Now, on that note, when you are more sailing, floating, your ribs are, your floating ribs are also, your body is already designed to let you have the, floating space, kind of, on the waters of life. Yeah, while there may be changes, you are sailing it. Yeah, okay. Evening, we'll see what happens. The more people know about this, we are having more life and living in the multiverse. Yeah. Because each person is in their own universes. And when their universes are coming alive and sustainably coming alive, then we have life and living in the multiverse. At least we are all in the same planet Earth. So our universe is becoming better. They've already found the protein in outer space and rocks with protein, which means my work, at least my universe, multiverse, is in some way having protein show up in outer space. They hadn't found this before, from what I understand. So something is happening in the multiverse, universe. Yeah, okay. In the cosmos, because I've been doing this work since a few years. So now I'm talking about it because in light of this evidence and new evidence of that, I'll be really stupid if I didn't say it. But the more I say it, the more people are doing this, we would see more signs of what's happening in the cosmos. Yeah, that'll be nice. So cosmic, miasmic, rheumatic, telluric effects on our health will also get reduced, and then WHO's global list of disease would also then further come down. That would be nice. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been of value to you. Good day.